Hi, this is Janice Perkins with Capacity, and thank you for joining me on the bright side today with Maryann Balbo from Cox Communications. And your title is like VP of something super important. What is it?
Vice President of Cox Media for Kansas and Arkansas.
Kansas and Arkansas. That's right. So thank you for joining me today. I was just commenting how lovely and beautiful your kitchen was.
Thank you.
Behind, we get to have all these views of, everybody's background or fake background. I'm not smart enough to do that on Zoom. So I want you to talk about team building, because some of the extraordinary stories that you have told me since COVID, Cox is not going back into the office till next year, right?
Right. Yes. At least January.
So the way that you have dealt with the distance and staying connected, I just want you to give me some examples of things that you've learned that are working really well for your organization and your teams.
Sure. Well, first of all, we were very fortunate that we already had a very strong culture that we were working on very intentionally for the last 2 years and building that foundation. So in Kansas and Arkansas, I oversee 6 offices across 2 states with the state in between. So geography has always been a challenge for us. We've used technology to be able to really try to connect. So when we were still in the office, we would use, video conferencing, and we would use social media. And then as we went home and went virtual completely, it kind of leveled the playing ground from a geography standpoint. Because we all were now working from home. And so it was like we had, instead of 6 offices, 54. And so we continued to rely on technology and build off from that really strong platform that we had already been invested in, and using social to really connect. So when we went virtual, it was a couple days before we were in the midst of having one of our largest events for our customers in the community with International Women's Day. So we had to cancel that event in an afternoon. At the same time, I had to share that we were all going to go virtual and have a test for a couple of days and then go from there. And at first, the team took it like, wow, really? At this point? Because it was early March. And then, by the end of the week, March Madness was canceled and the NBA. And it was like, wow, Cox was way ahead of it and made some really good decisions early on. And we always said that if we were going to make an error, it was going to be on the conservative side, because we were willing to make sure our people are safe. But when we all said goodbye to each other, at least in the Wichita office, it almost felt like the last day of school as we were getting our belongings
camp
home. Yeah. And so with my leadership team, immediately we all huddled and said, okay, we got to keep morale up. We got to keep people connected. We have to be very intentional. We'll get the business done. We do that every day. But what are we going to do? What's our plan as far as making sure that everybody feels like they're still part of our team and they have a voice, et cetera. So we put together all kinds of really great ideas from day one of how we were going to engage, whether it be going live on Facebook or having contests on our private Fun Squad page of show me what you're having for lunch, or, show me your work partners, which, one of mine is my very large Great Pyrenees in the background. All these really great ways to just connect and kind of take advantage of we're at home. Let's share what your kitchen looks like, et cetera, because it really does humanize each other. And as we had got the news that we were going to then stay until the end of the month, and then the end of the month went till June, and then June went to September, and then September went to January, we all along have been very transparent and shared what we knew when we could, and have really tried to be intentional about how do we keep people engaged. So some things that we've done is, asked everybody, call 2 people today, just out of the blue, call 2 people. Well, I just started dialing people on our team, and I ended up talking to one of our teammates who was feeling very down. This person lives by themselves, and they didn't have a lot of connection, and they were concerned about going out. And just a 30-minute phone call of just shooting made a huge difference. And then another day, we decided that we would start to mimic something they were doing in our California market, where they called it hallway chats. So we would just randomly pick people, and they'd find a time, and they would meet, and they would just get on Teams and sit there and chat about what they would around the water cooler. No business was allowed. And they would call these meetings, which we still do, Vegas, right? Because nobody talks about what happens.
That's right.
Things.
That's
and
right.
Then to be more inclusive and inviting some of our senior leadership out of Atlanta and within our region. and having these hallway conversations, that people got to know each other that wouldn't have normally had seen each other because they were in an office in Arkansas and maybe the other office was in Topeka. We also had a few people who started the week that we went virtual. Sometimes I'm like, are you real? Really? But we see you on video. So we had to really engage them and help them and go through trainings using technology. And so we have just done a variety of different things to keep our team engaged and cohesive. And what I have found is that when one person has a bad day, luckily somebody else is having a good day, and we can lift each other up and we're there for each other, because not everybody is perfect all the time. In fact, one day I went by the office, just drove by with my son on the weekend, and I saw all the Cox cars out there, and it took me back, and I was like, gosh, I missed this. And, you know, I myself out of that mode. And then in my team meeting that week, I always do a motivational minute. I talked about that, and I just started crying in front of my entire team across all these states. And just, you're watching in the chat and my texts are blowing up, and they're like, you know, you're real. Thank you for being vulnerable. Thank you for sharing what we're all feeling. Cause I was like, that was so hard to see. Another team meeting, we had our whole agenda and our PowerPoints and our Kahoots and all that. And we started the meeting out with just, what are we grateful for? Can we just do some gratitude? And I'm texting the leader who was running the team meeting, and I'm like, take the PowerPoint down. We're not doing it today. No business. Let's just stay on and just share with one another. And there were a lot of tears and just heartbreak and then laughter. And it was just, you know, it was one of the most, I would say, meaningful meetings I've ever been in, by just going with the flow of allowing people to be real. And then we've had a lot of fun. Okay. So we did these painting kits for all of our teams, and we sent them to their house, or we delivered them on their front doorstep, and they were our logo, our Infinity logo, which is our theme for 2020, and came with our little paints. And then we all got on teams, and we had happy hour, and we all painted together. And that was really cool to just like relax and, you know, and share and laugh. And we've done everything from Thirsty Thursdays, which we did before, which all the different markets would do. But, you know, Wichita was always the biggest office. So Arkansas, you know, they still did it, but it would only be a few of them. And we tried to FaceTime them, and it didn't work. Well, now with geography, we all get on teams, we share recipes. One person will be the bartender. We go out and get the ingredients in advance, and we all share. We've done everything from categories to scavenger hunts. We've had reading time where we've had some of our team leads just wanted to, you know, read about Who Moved My Cheese. We did one where one of our sales folks, she's a grandma, and she was talking about making memories. And on a Friday afternoon, we just all got on teams and started talking about, like, what are some of the memories you had as a child? And you realize they weren't a lot about expensive vacations or toys. It was about making cookies with grandma or going for a walk. And then we all pledged to each other, this weekend, we're all going to go make a memory. And we do a lot of sharing on Facebook. So this private thing that we have is really where a lot of that interaction happens.
That is really fun. So do you think that that's reduced the amount of siloing that you were feeling before with geography?
Yeah, so when I got here, we had a lot of silos, not just because of geography, but just in general.
Departmental.
So we brought a lot of those down, and using social and really starting with our purpose and our why, and a lot of work with Simon Sinek's purpose information, and really working on our personal whys and our collective whys. And then once COVID happened, we were all in a really good place, but those geography limitations were still there. And then all of a sudden, it just erased it. And not just for my team. I mean, even as an organization within Cox Media, we just put together our strategy for the rest of the year. Whereas we would normally do that more at center with some chiming in. We had 125 people across the United States who contributed to that sales plan. Geography didn't, job title didn't matter anymore. So one of the, I would say, benefits of COVID is that it has really taken geography limitations off the table, because it's leveled the playing ground. Now, one of the challenges, we have a lot of people who are super, I would say, extroverts like myself, who get a lot of energy from others. And that can be very, very challenging. But I think you can get enough of a fix if you're very, very intentional about how you're using technology to get you through, knowing that this is temporary and that we'll all be back together, whatever that looks like. I think we've learned a lot too of what we can do remotely and what we can't, and how to build teams and how teams work together. So I think that, what we've been able to do is just be so very intentional about what we want, and then learn from it and figure out what's worked and what's not, and be able to adapt and pivot, because we've had to be in the midst of this change. They're constantly moving quickly, and we don't have all the answers, and there's a lot of uncertainty. And my job as a leader to make sure that my people feel safe, and that they know that this is a place where they can be them and they can share ideas as well as concerns, and we'll get them through it together. And then we've seen that resonate with our customers, which has been great.
So a couple of the words that you said that I love, I'm a word nerd, and so I pick up on it, and intentionality as well as adaptability. And those are a couple words that I've used with other clients as well. The other one I want you to speak to is resilience. So where have you found resilience as a leader and with your teams?
Sure. So fairly early on as an enterprise with Cox Media, and we have 10 markets across the country, we all were trying to really find a way to identify those who are really showcasing their resilience in the markets. And we came up with a enterprise award called Stronger Than. And
I love that.
The award, isn't that great? And now we've moved it to monthly because we're still virtually, and it's a little longer than we thought it was going to be. But really looking at that award, when we were thinking through what that means, it was all about resilience. Who are those people who are embracing the change? Looking at it as a way to reimagine. That's a word that we use quite a bit within our organization. Reimagine our business, reimagine our approach to business, reimagine your approach to your day. What does that mean? And so thinking of resilience, we never shut down, right? We never shut down. And we meaning my team, we never leaned on COVID as being an excuse, okay? A couple of days we were like, oh my God, March Madness just canceled. And that's like, 3/4 of my revenue for that month. And
right.
Okay, we had a bracket challenge where it was all about, our revenue that was around March Madness. Well, we just pivoted next day and said, okay, it's not about driving revenue for March Madness. It's about how much of that revenue we can keep. Okay, let's figure out how to turn the stakes. So we never use COVID as an excuse. We know that it's real. We know that it's impacted our business tremendously. But instead, let's figure out how we can use it as a strength. How can we stand on that, and how can we move forward? And so as we were putting together, our projections for the rest of the year, I was pretty bold in that I believed in end of July, early August, we were going to start to see recovery, not necessarily because of the marketplace and the cases and all those pieces, not even taking that data into account, but more about what my team was focused on and where their mindset was and where that resilience came into play. And were we doing the right things instead of leaning back, looking at what we lost, where we're looking forward to how we could reimagine and recreate. And I'm happy to say that August, we made our total budget.
Wow.
And so excited,
congratulations.
yes, that's due to the team being focused on the right things and controlling what they can control. So in my motivational minute each week, and then in all my Facebook posts and my LinkedIn, I'm kind of a pseudo, I would say, psychologist or motivator or something, where I've been really trying to get people to think about, listen, you know what, there's so much out of our control. What can we do that is? We can control how we think about things. We can control our attitude. We can control our activity. Let's control all of that, and everything else will fall into play. We got to have a plan, and not to keep looking backwards. You even see on my necklace, I have an arrow. This was one of our first themes when I arrived at Cox Media, was keep moving forward. Right? You look back to learn, but then you got to keep moving forward. You can't live back there. So my team has this necklace. The women do, and all the men have a pin. We have arrows throughout our office. And then our next year was raising the bar. So they all have bar. And this year is the infinity. So it's and beyond. So we really try to stay focused on making sure that our resilience is first and foremost, I would say, a focus for us, so that we aren't using COVID or anything else as an excuse that we're in charge of our own destiny. And it shows in our performance, it shows in our attitude. Our culture is amazingly strong. We have access to people. We probably wouldn't have had access to before. People know each other more than they ever did before, because we've just leveled the ground and all these hallway chats and all these fun activities and using social media. And yeah, it's like I said, we have a couple people that we haven't even met. We know everything about them.
That is so awesome. So I want to touch on something that you brought up and give you an example that will make you laugh really hard, because you were talking about not using COVID as an excuse. And so my dad is an animal nutrition guy, and I help him with his bookkeeping. And we got into a giant snafu with this nationwide trucking company who all of a sudden started emailing invoices and not mailing them anymore. But they chose an email address that wasn't being used, and then he got a backlog. And so when I called to kind of straighten it out, the lady said, well, we're all working remotely. And I said, okay, so is everyone else. Why didn't you contact us as a customer and ask what email address to use? Or why aren't you using a VPN printer? You're a nationwide, world-dominating trucking company, and you can't get a printer with your... And she said, no, they won't get a printer for any of us. And it was just like a very shocking moment. I've had a couple of those in this client relation expectation of, I had another one that happened with silverware at a restaurant. My kids, I mortified them because they brought me teeny tiny little plastic utensils and I was paying like $100 for dinner. Anyway,
Yeah.
So this thing that we're doing with the people that we relate to in the midst of this crisis are still the people who are paying our bills. We want to still please them. And so
yeah.
It's almost like there's a whole sectors of our culture that have decided that revenues aren't as important anymore. Yes. And they can't drive that client experience because of the excuse. So I want you to speak to that a little bit more about that attitude, because I do feel it's very prevalent. Do you feel that at times?
You know, I do as a customer. I have quite a bit, but those that have been able to adapt quickly have had a lot of success. Like we have a local car dealer here in the middle of April, and the shutdown was one of the first to deliver cars to your home. Yes. And actually ended up buying a car during that time. And then was promoting, you know, do you need a ride to the grocery store? We'll give you a ride. Do you need a ride to the doctor's office? We'll give you a ride, whatever it means. Come and get your car cleaned for free. We'll sanitize it. You know, taking like the community needs and able to find a solution for that. And they had a really great month in April. So at Cox, we are all about living our brand, and customer service is top priority for us, taking care of our people and our customers. And we never want to not fulfill on that brand promise. So there were some things that we couldn't do, meaning more of the operational side, just because of the climate, whether it meant come into your home and be able to install your cable. So what do? We figure out, well, there's an app, right? So we can have our customers download the app. We will come to your door. We'll put your equipment on your front doorstep. We'll stand outside. We'll go through the app and we'll walk you through it so that you can still get your cable installed. So like thinking very quickly of how do we reimagine? And then for us on the advertising side, so important that we're still providing solutions for our customers and their messaging. Maybe it's on a different platform. Maybe we need to have a conversation differently, via, technology. But whatever that is, how can we solve for you? We actually, across all of our markets, and specifically in Kansas and Arkansas, we promoted restaurants that were open for either delivery or takeout during the shutdown. So all of April and most of May for free. So we reached out to all local restaurants and said, hey, are you open? Let us tell people, because we want you to do well. You do well, our community does well, our businesses do well, our children do well. And we had over 125 restaurants in Kansas and in Wichita, Greater Kansas, and then in Arkansas, Fort Smith and Fayetteville, that we promoted on TV, telling people they're open to try to drum up business. We don't normally give away free advertising.
That's right.
Important it was to make sure that we were living that brand promise and not using COVID as an excuse, but instead, how can we help others to adapt? How can we adapt to it? And how can we grow stronger? Because those businesses that are able to adapt during these tough times, they're the ones that are going to have market share when this is over. The ones that people are going to remember, that that auto dealer offered to drive you to the doctor's office. You probably never used it, but they offer. And that's where you stand out among your competitors. And that's how you live your brand promise to your customers.
No, I love that. And I want you to leave people with a piece of advice. So if you were a company that didn't have a great culture before this, and you've been trying to, you know, trip and fall and stand up and trip and fall and stand up right now, what are the best steps in order to try to route the ship and make sure that you're building culture, you know, when it feels like you're filling a hole, so to speak?
Right. I would say congratulations, because you got a new start. You got a start. This is your chance, right? It would have been very challenging had we had still been in our norm, whatever that was, right? And that you didn't have that push. So now you got the push. Now you're out of the norm. What are you going to do with it? I would say first and foremost, I would start with what your purpose is as an organization. What's your why? Why do you do what you do? Because people buy from companies because of why they do what they do, not necessarily what they do. So I would start with that. And then I would say this is a great time to reinvent. I would bring everybody in and I would have collaborations using technology. And I would try to think, okay, how has our business changed? How's the needs of our customers changed? How can we use what we have now to be able to adapt? What can we stop because it's not relevant anymore? And what can we start because that's where there's a need? I had read a story about a really fancy restaurant in New York City where it was like, you know, a couple $100 a person to sit down and have these fancy meals, right? And as you know, New York was hit first. And of course, the restaurant was closed. And the owner was like, oh my gosh, like what's going to happen? Like we're going to go under. And then one of the waiters had an idea. Why don't we deliver that same experience to people's homes? We bring the white, you know, tablecloth. We bring the expensive silverware, not plastic. We bring the candles. We bring the expensive wine. We bring it to their homes. We do a video on how to set it up. And then we can recreate our business. And they're still in business today and have rethought their entire business model. There's a restaurant, a bar, an old bar in, I don't know if it's Fort Smith or Fayetteville, called Maxine's. I know that because it's the name of my daughter and I've been there in business. And they were doing these really great things where their bartenders are known for their great cocktail recipes, right? So they were doing this thing where you could come by and you pick up all the ingredients. It's in a basket. You pick up all the ingredients with some of their famous snacks. And then you go home and then their bartender would live stream for everybody who purchased the packet. And you would make the drink at home with the bartender. I mean,
that's fun.
How is that? So we can't go sit there, but we still want one of your drinks. How can we recreate that at home? So I would say to businesses that maybe didn't have the culture before that was positive and are really struggling to figure out how they fit in, congratulations, you got a fresh start. Figure it out. And some of the best ideas come from your customers and your employees.
And your employees, that's exactly right. No, I think that's a really great, and fantastic advice. And asking the hard questions is something that when things are going great, we don't stop and take the time to do, although they're imperative all the time. But asking hard questions about maybe why were we doing what we were doing before this happened? And maybe this is a time for a new direction or the time to reevaluate departments or services or products and value, and ask the hard questions. And like you said, it's an opportunity to slice, dice, and recreate. And why not?
Exactly.
Why not? Why not? I think
push in the pool that you needed, right? Like you were dipping your toes in, you were thinking about it. Oh, we probably need to have a website. We probably need to have e-commerce on our site. We'll get there, etc. It's kind of like me when I need breaks. Like the gentleman will say, oh, you need breaks. I'm like, oh, I can't hear anything. I'll wait. And then, months later, okay, I need breaks today, right?
Right.
Push you needed because at the time you might not have put a priority on it. You didn't think it was important. But I don't use COVID as an excuse, but COVID has changed us. And it's given us an opportunity to think differently about our business and how we serve our customers and how we serve our employees.
Right. No, opportunity. So tell me from a personal situation, what is the bright side for you personally through this?
through this? You know, like I said, I'm an extrovert. I get a lot of my energy from people. I love to get in my high heels every day and go to work and be around my teams. And that's just who I am. And at first it was a real challenge to be at home. I mean, my husband was working from home. Our children were virtual, our dogs, the puppies, you know, everything going on, and we moved. So it was very challenging, but I would say the bright side is that once I put this into perspective, I thought I get to work from home, right? I get to see my children more than I did before. I get to take a one-on-one call while taking a walk with my puppies around the corner. I get to try to figure out a little bit more of a balance and not have the excuse of a commute. So the bright side has been for me to find some balance. I'm not great at it, but I'm definitely a lot better than I was. And it has really helped me to find gratitude in my health, in my family, and be much more intentional about appreciating that. And of course, I want to go back to the office and I want to be with my team, but I'll kind of miss also sitting in my kitchen and, you know, having the ability to, you know, pick up a little bit before they all get home and have the evening to, you know, kind of relax and close my laptop or close my office door. And so there is a bright side. I would never in a million years have taken this time to be at home. Even when I was on maternity leave, I took 8 weeks each time and started working, you know, one time, like within like 2 weeks. So I've never had just time where I was at home and it was just me. And so it's been eye-opening and soul-searching, and I find a lot of gratitude in it. So there is a bright side to this terrible time within our country and in our world, but I'm an optimist and I choose to see the bright side.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Maryann Balbo with Cox Media. This is Janice Perkins with Capacity. Thank you.